composition theory and musicology, but CMT didn't seem right, and to have all three words didn't seem right either. So we're just going to stay critical studies colloquium for the moment. I'm just going to introduce Darrell White. If you're here, you probably already read his bio, and you probably already read his abstract. So we're getting a preview of a paper that he's going to give in Belgium in about 2 weeks. I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. This is a good turnout. Dr. Rosenblatt said turnout was usually not so good for these things, but I figured I'd attract a few jazz people. And I've met one, the new professor here. Who else is a jazz person in here? All the younger cats here. You play trumpet, don't you? No, I'm trumpet. What do you play?
Vibes and guitar.
Vibes and guitar. Guitar player. How many guitar players do we have here today? There we go. Yes. I am a guitar player. If you saw the picture, you probably surmised that. Okay, yeah, as Dr. Rosenblatt said, this is kind of my warm-up for a paper that I'll be delivering at the Euromac 8 in Belgium in a couple of weeks, which is the European Music Analysis Conference. People from all over, lots of folks in the United States and all other places around the globe. So it's a real pleasure for me to be able to present here at the colloquium. This really has been made possible by support from within the School of Music, from the College of Fine Arts, as well as the Graduate Professional and Student Council. They've all contributed to kind of offset some of the costs involved with this trip, so I'm really appreciative of them, to Director Woods and to Professor Pomeroy for their endorsement to make this possible. The title of my presentation is The Melodic Harmonic Divorce in Jazz, and I'm assuming that when I go to the Euromac, we'll have enough theorists there who are interested in popular music and the theory of popular music to know about the work that's been done in this area. And I'm specifically taking off from David Temperley's work and his 2007 article by that title. Now, some of you may not be, even if you're jazz people, you may not have read this article, or you may not be up on the literature having to do with this so-called melodic harmonic divorce. So I'll give a little background here, perhaps more than I will be giving in Belgium, but I'll give it for your sake so you kind of know where we're beginning and where we're making some departures. All right, see if we can do this handily. I begin with this quotation from the composer and theorist George Rochberg. There should be a complete sense of agreement between the harmonic implications contained in the unfolding pitches of the melodic lines and the supporting pitches contained in the accompanimental designs. Simply put, there ought to be a pitch accord between melody and accompaniment. This I call the unitary view of harmony, or pitch content and its organization in tonal music. David Temperley in 2007 wrote an article, The Melodic Harmonic Divorce in Rock. Among others, he has shown that rock music often exhibits an organization in which there is not always a pitch accord between melody and accompaniment. Temperley dubs this stratified pitch organization as opposed to a unified organization in terms of the tonal theory that Rochberg would understand. This so-called melodic harmonic divorce in rock music is a challenge to the theoretical assumption that harmony ought to govern, to use Temperley's word, ought to govern what melody does. This phenomenon, this melodic harmonic divorce, is present to varying extents in all popular music that we have examined, including, I would argue, in jazz. Let me give you an example that Temperley gives in his article from rock music. This is from Steve Miller's Rocking Me. Anybody know this tune? Dr. Pomeroy, I know, is a fan of Steve Miller. So here we have guitar players in the room. What's B5 mean?
Power chord.
It's a power chord. It's the lower end of a chord. We leave out the third, which is probably going to sound anyway with distortion. That overtone is reinforced. But we're playing on the lower end. So that's about as B as we can get. And then it's followed by an A5. We're down a whole step to flat 7, to use Roman numeral nomenclature. But if you look at the melody, it's squarely in B major, the pentatonic major. And we're okay for the first couple of bars, but when we get to measure 3 and 4, we're on this A5, this power chord. But the melody still seems to be outright and comes to rest with a caesura on B, the key tone. Now that's not supposed to happen according to our tone music theory. Those would be non-chord tones. They're supposed to resolve, and they don't, which was Temperley's one of his points. They don't resolve the way they should. As a matter of fact, they act like chord tones, and their organization suggests that they're not being governed by the underlying harmony. Another example. This is from Sergio Ricardo's In Cuanto a Tristeza Now Vem. My Portuguese is not too good, but I think that means until the sadness no longer comes, or while the sadness does not come. This is a bossa nova tune, the first few bars of it. And I'll have you look here at bar 12, where the D flat major 7 chord is. Now, jazz folks know from their harmony that if we're in the key of C minor or C major, D flat major 7 can have what kind of function? Anybody? It could be a subdominant, it could be a dominant. A lot of times it's used for, there's some difference, theorists are going to differ on this, but I know it as usually used as a dominant function. But if you'll notice, the tonic chord, C minor 7, is arpeggiated from root to 7th above that chord. So in the melody, we have a clear projection or assertion of the tonic. While in the harmony, we have a substitution for a dominant function in the key. That's what I mean by this melodic harmonic divorce. Rather than characterizing this relationship as a divorce, I prefer the term diversity. It's a little less in your face, a little kinder and gentler. Instead of strata, I will call melody and its chordal accompaniment layers. And these are not to be confused with Schenkerian layers. It's just the English equivalent of strata. Because diversity is so often expressed between melody and accompaniment, we isolate those layers for the purpose of analysis. When melody and its chordal accompaniment manifests the kind of apparent independence that Temperley observed in rock music, we will call it melodic accompanimental diversity, or MAD. This is my thumbnail definition of that. MAD is a condition of musical organization in which there is a simultaneous divergence of tonal functions or projections between the melody, or the main voice, and its accompaniment. Now, the presence of tonally diverse layers in a work raises some obvious questions for a theorist of tonal music. What are the consequences of diverse layers so far as tonality is concerned? Do works or parts of them cease being tonal because of such layers? If not, then how do we explain tonality with diverse layers? We have no theory that adequately accounts for the frequency and distribution of this phenomenon, nor for how it functions in and as tonal music. Clearly, more study is needed. Our interest in this presentation is not in the quite clear and sometimes extensive occurrences that occur in rock music, but in more varied and subtle manifestations of this phenomenon that are typical for jazz, in my view. So a couple of brief examples in jazz. This is the beginning of 502 Blues. This is a 4-bar phrase. As you can quickly see, the melody seems to imply A minor. A leap of a 4th there at the beginning, minor 3rd above. It seems to be a modal A minor, comes to rest on scale degree 5. So by itself, perhaps it suggests a modal A minor. This is how it's harmonized. It is enclosed by primary functions, tonic, dominant. We have a supertonic chord there. But notice under scale degree, flat tree, I'm using flat tree where y'all might use 3 just because I use a 12 pitch class system here. Underneath that C, which if I'm right in the key of A minor is a stable tone of the associate of the tonic chord, or the tonic tone. Underneath it, it's harmonized with a D flat major 7. And if you see the Roman numeral there, that really doesn't make much sense in terms of the tonal syntax we were taught in school. But there it is. So this is another case, just that one bar there, where we have this mixture, this mismatch between what I believe is the tone projection of this melody in A minor and the accompanying harmony there. So let's listen to that. The pianist adds a couple of added tones to the A minor, but essentially that's what we have. Okay. That's a Wayne Shorter accordion, we recognize that. So he does 2 iterations of that. It turns out to be a sentential form, for those of you who are into that form theory kind of stuff. And that's the basic idea of the tune. It starts in A minor, it doesn't end there, of course, if anybody knows the tune. But another example. This is Duke Ellington's In a Mellow Tone, first 16 measures. It's a 32-bar form. What I have bracketed there, above and below, is the basic idea. This gives the motivic material for pretty much all these transformations that you see following. And it's in the key of A flat. And I think that the first few notes, those pickup notes, seem to me to suggest perhaps the dominant. And then the span there of a fourth, and ending the idea with a whole note, A flat, seems to me to suggest tonic. So that simple figure is repeated a second time, a third time without alteration. The fourth time it is altered, but it keeps the same basic shape. And this is a deviation from this second, this one here, deviated with the concluding tone is a little bit different. This one is also a rising line, and it too rises up to scale degree 3, and its bass tone is scale degree 1. Here we have the original form of that idea, and then this arpeggiation of the tonic chord right there in these 3 bars, kind of a liquidating thing, coming to a cadence, getting ready for the pickups to begin the second half of the form. So to me, in my sense of this, judging just by the melody itself, this pretty clearly affirms A flat major, and the melody is mostly made of tones that hover around A flat, and the range is rather narrow. Here's how Ellington harmonized it. As you can see, that first A flat is not the chord it's not harmonized with the chord we might expect. We get that in the third bar there, and we see that he does harmonize the pickup notes there in bar 2 with the dominant. A flat is carried through here. The same figure is now reharmonized. Instead of having a dominant, still holding the A flat. This is an interesting one. We're back on the tonic tone in the melody, but the chord is the 2/7 of the subdominant. We have a slight emphasis here on the subdominant. 2/7 to 5/7 to 4 here. And then we reach our scale degree 3, which should suggest the tonic from the melodic structure alone, but it's harmonized with the subdominant. Something that happens quite a lot. You see that a lot. That is held through here. We have another interesting case here. This figure, which with a bass note of A flat and outlining the major third, is harmonized with G flat 7, the flat 7, 7, and so on and so forth. This area is very interesting because we have the tonic triad arpeggiated or prolonged through here, and yet use both non-tonic functions. So, clear cases of this madness I was talking about, and let's see if we can do this solution here. This is Count Basie. Okay, now for a little theory. You knew you were going to get this, right? So how do we differentiate these layers that I'm talking about, and what is the basis for this melodic accompanimental diversity? Layers, in my view, are differentiated by the roles they play, and these distinct roles are a basis for diversity. Melody and accompaniment in their purest forms, as they are in songs, like in rock songs, pop songs, they are quintessential layers because they so clearly take different forms and perform different roles in musical works. Their analysis becomes a model for the analysis of layers generally. The roles that musical parts take are what Schoenberg called formal functions. And if you're not up on your Schoenberg, his thumbnail definition, or my version of it, is formal functions are the roles that parts take in order to express the ideas of a musical work. We appeal to his theory of formal functions because in our reading of it, it was developed for a multiplicity of formal arrangements that includes tone music, in which the potential for diversity exists between parts that we conceive as layers. Hence, in formal analysis, we identify layers and describe their elements on the basis of their roles or formal functions. In tone music, every layer has an organization of tones that is sensible as a flow of forces that, to some degree, does or does not assert a tone center. Our goal is to highlight these organizations. Now, this layered approach means making a few changes to how basic analysis of tone music is done. Pitched elements are not assumed to have pre-assigned meanings. They derive their meanings primarily from the formal functions of the layers of which they are part. As a consequence of this, the meaning of a pitch class in the melody may not be the same as that pitch class when it occurs in the accompanimental chords. Melodic meanings are not chordal meanings. MAD comes about when the function of a melodic tone or group of tones differs with the function which harmonizing the chord or chords. Melodic tones in such cases may be consonant or dissonant with the chords that harmonize them. It is not consonance or dissonance, but divergence of function that is the point here. What this means is, as these examples have indicated, is that when MAD is present in tone music, tones, melodic tones, have two meanings. I'll give you another example of those two meanings here in a minute. So just to summarize this, our point in this kind of analysis is not to unify the strands of music, melody, and accompaniment in terms of a unitary theory of harmony or pitch content, but rather to point out the diversity that exists in those layers and to try to discover the organization of each layer independently and then what might be their interaction in terms of the forces they develop. This is the tune that we're going to talk a little bit, not yet. This is my two meanings here, key meanings versus chord meanings. These are typical examples we encounter all the time, but we probably don't think much about them. This is one that Schoenberg has in his Harmonia Lyra, where he gives an example where he's talking about melodies, the cadence on the tonic, but we have a deceptive cadence on the subdominant. It's cases like this that can bring about diversity. In this case, especially at a cadence where we emphasize the melodic function of the tone there in the treble. We're on the tonic function there in C major, so the T is for obviously. Here in scale degree 3, that's an associate of the tonic. So we give those tonic functions, but clearly these are all subdominant functions. And in jazz, as in diatonic tonal theory, we'll rationalize those tones in those different ways. It's a seventh, it's a ninth, whatever it is. But these are simple examples of how this tonal divergence comes about. And I would argue, as especially in the tune I just played, you can hear those melodic tones, you can hear the tonic function that they have, even though you're hearing it against non-tonic functions. So I want to talk a little bit about, give an overview of this tune 4 by Eddie Benson. I'm going to play a recording that Miles Davis did in the 50s. Just as an overview of this, again, it's another 32-bar form, a common form in jazz, 16 and 16. And it ends the first 16 bars in a half cadence. We repeat back to the beginning, we take a second ending, and we end with a pack. So this baby is tonally closed. It divides in half in the middle and seems to function on the largest scale as a large antecedent consequence. So it's a large periodic structure. Here I show the bar groupings, the cadences. But we notice that there's sub-groupings there in 4-bar units, so that we can subdivide those 16-bar sections into sentential structures. That's still my antecedent consequence. I'm saying that the first 16 bars, the last 16 bars are large sentences, compound sentences, with 8-bar presentation and 8-bar continuation. And I'll show you the designations here. So here's our presentation up to about there. The pickup notes, the continuation begins, and we end our continuation here with a cadence, with a half cadence. Now in the presentation, we have a basic idea, which is basically 4 bars in length, which is repeated, in this case sequentially, and then a continuation begins, leading, it's usually the most unstable portion of the theme type, and then it ends with a cadence, in this case a half cadence, judging by the harmonic structure, and that's repeated. So this large period is made of 2 sentences. This is our basic idea. This provides most of the motivic material for the tune, perhaps all of it. Take a good look at that, because that's important in more ways than one. I think there's a tonal problem here. Schoenberg is big on this, the tonal problem, the imbalance that grows throughout a work when you start putting notes together. I would suggest that the problem here is that the outline of these notes, if we talk about melodic implications, what harmonic implications they have, the floor note here is a B flat. We keep iterating this major third, and then we jump up to the 5th above the floor note, descend to the 3rd, back to the floor note, then we have this alteration. I don't know what that's doing. Is that a blue note, or what is that? But it looks like we're implying B flat. But as you saw, we're not in the key of B flat. We're in the key of E flat. It's harmonized in E flat major 7. And then we have these other harmonies that we have to explain. So I think there's a tonal problem here. Not only do we have that, but we have these eccentric emphases here. We have the move to the D flat there at the end of the basic idea, which is repeated in transposition at the end of its reiteration. And I'm interpreting these chord changes as emphases upon those keys, D flat major and G flat major. So why would we have these divergences at the end of the basic idea and its reiteration? I should remind you that in sentence theory, at least in classical theory, the presentation section of this form should be the most tight-knit, the most tonally prolongational and emphatic of the whole theme. Things tend to get looser in the middle, then they may settle out at the end if there's no modulation and come to cadence or half cadence or attack, which these sentences do. But what's the big idea, in addition to that tonal problem that I think is there, I'll talk more about. Why these divergences here, especially since we're not really leaving the key?
Quick question.
Yeah.
Could you go back to that immediately previous one again?
This one?
Are you telling us that the, I guess it would be measure 3, has a G flat in it? Because of the lowercase 2/7? Or
Yeah, this is an E flat minor 7.
even E flat minor 7?
Yeah.
Right, okay, got it.
Right. Now, please jump in if some of my nomenclature is not clear.
No,
We
it's
all-
clear, I just want to make sure.
Okay. In addition, we also have something curious about this tune. We have a pattern of interruptions. If I'm right about these little evasions here, we begin in E flat, judging from the accompaniment alone, we begin in E flat major, the tonic chord. We have this suggestion of D flat major, which goes nowhere. We're back to E flat with a supertonic. Another little deviation here to a feigned G flat. We're back to E flat for at the beginning of the continuation. My fake book has a G minor 7 of 3. Some charts will show this as an E flat major 7. But I hear that G flat, the G minor 7 as a tonic substitute, so the function is still T function to me. And then finally we have this, what really is a passing feint here to an enharmonic F flat. It's notated in E major in music. And then finally we cadence here, back in E flat on the dominant at the end of the first 16 bars. So we have the kind of leapfrogging here with and we're breaking up the tonal continuity. So why all these little puzzles? I think they're all explained by the idea of the piece. And this is what this tune is about. That opening, those opening pickups that begin the basic idea, I understand is scale degree 5, 6, and 7 in the key. And we're aiming for scale degree 8, but we don't get there. We make 1 attempt, 2 attempts, 3 attempts, we fail every time. So the idea of this thing is a simple pattern, a scalar pattern of tonal completion, which goes unfulfilled despite numerous attempts. And you'll notice that, that in the presentation phrase, we begin on the tonic chord. We have that disparity, which is basically an unfinished melodic idea that's incomplete. And when we repeat it a fourth higher, we're now on the tones of the tonic. 1, 2, 3, right? There's scale degree 5 there. But again, it's accompanied with a non-tonic chord. But bear in mind that that also, if I'm right about the idea of the piece, is an incomplete idea. It's heading toward A flat, which would fit with the harmonization. So I noticed that there is this pattern of sequential tone content from the basic idea and its reiteration here. It's one chromatic note that throws us with those little weird 2-7, 5-7 things. This pattern of content continues on into the continuation, although the basic idea is abandoned in that form and something else happens. But you'll see we have that chromatic B there. So here we'll begin with these pickup notes, B flat, B. I'm outlining this. This, I think, is another attempt to finally reach home base, but another failed attempt. We get as far as scale degree 6, and then we descend to scale degree 3, a tone of the tonic, another point of diversity because it's harmonized with a 5-7. Now, you jazz people, or I know what you're thinking, and we'll address that in a moment. I think what I didn't do is play this guy. Well, we should probably go back, you know. Bear with me. I'm working out the bugs in there. Way back. Okay. Okay, let's do this one. Recording technology has come a long way.
Is that Miles Davis?
Yeah. Okay, and so this is the point that we're getting to, and I know some of you have anticipated this. The idea must be completed. We don't have tonal coherence or logic. We don't have the working out, the logical working out of the idea of the tune, and we don't achieve full coherence until the very end with this cadence. You'll notice that this is a cadence in which we ascend to the final tone. Now that, one of the other unusual things about this tune, that is also unusual. Most melodies descend to their final. They don't ascend. And we're ending an octave higher than we might have thought, judging by the beginning. But I argue that an ascent is necessary because of the idea of this tune. There is in the melodic progression B flat D to C, scale degree 6 that you saw a moment ago, there is the implication of continued upward motion that is here realized in the final phrase. The theme ends with a melodic motive that ends the basic idea, this time ending on the right tone with the right chord. And this is a synopsis. Here we see failure to achieve our goal, failure of a different kind, so the problem is surmounted here. It's becoming more emphatic as we try to work it out and reach the goal, but still we don't make it. We don't make it till the very end, and that explains the rising contour of that line. The theme has not carried out its logic until the Mochevic process is complete, and we have full formal and tonal coherence, which we do have here. We have a match, the tonic function of the melody, and then the chords below. So, how do the points of diversity come about? Well, they come about in two ways that I can see. Because of the idea of the tune, that is, the basic idea is incomplete. Measure 5 and 6, where we have the tonic tones in the melody, an incomplete basic idea on its way to completion still projects the tonic. The second way it comes about is by tonal assertion in the melody. Here we have the tone of the tonic, a stable tone, good tone for a cadence, but yet it's accompanied with a dominant chord. Now we can answer the questions we posed about the pattern of tonal interruptions. Why those interruptions? They are part of the logical process that is ongoing. They are successive denials of tonal completion that instigate further stages of what turns out to be a process beginning with the first tone and ending with the last. And what keeps the tonic from being obscured by this process? The interruptions or diversions are short-lived. After each diversion, the tonic is reasserted in the melody, and chord functions of the key are reasserted in the accompaniment. And we can begin to answer the questions we posed ourselves about the impact on tonality of tonally diverse layers. What are the consequences of diverse layers so far as tonality is concerned? And the answer is, it's too early to say. More research needs to be done. It is my hunch that there is a range of consequences, judging from